It's all eyes to the lights
and foot to the floor.
And we go racing here in the studio.
It's Harry Benjamin.
It's all eyes to the lights and foot to the floor as we go racing in Qatar.
Hi kids, welcome back to Backseat Drivers Podcast. Today we have F1 commentator Harry Benjamin. In this episode, Harry discusses life as a Formula One commentator.
He also tells us what it's like to work with the legendary Martin Brundle.
So to then be told at the age of, I was 26, that you're going to lead the Sky Sports F1 commentary. Your co-commentator is Martin Brundle, by the way.
Cool.
Okay, sure, great.
Yeah. Drama between... and how important drama between rivals really is.
Right at the end of this year, we had this kind of weird, brawl between Verstappen and George Russell. Yeah. I want more of that. Yeah. I want more outrageous stuff going
more
on.
More like
because,
other sports.
Exactly, because it brings out the personalities.
NASCAR.
It's fun. Yeah. It's fun for us.
Yeah.
Right, kids, don't forget, we don't get paid anything right now.
We're broke as Please subscribe.
Right, so Harry, how do you become a commentator in Formula One?
Well, I never set out actually to be a commentator. I didn't really want to be one. I thought it would be too difficult. I don't know how they keep talking through lap one or how you play for time during like a red flag or something.
Yeah.
But I wanted to work in like broadcasting and motorsport in more of a general sense. But then basically an opportunity came up where another commentator was giving up a role and it was to be Porsche Super Cup commentator. And I just basically sent a show reel in. I'd never done any commentary before. I'd done like podcasts and bits and bobs of presenting, but I hurriedly ripped some old YouTube footage of F2 and Porsche, cobbled together some three-lap commentary, stuck it all together, sent it to Formula One, and then that led to basically a meeting. And then a year later, 6 months later, I got asked, can you do commentary for Porsche Super Cup? And I said, yeah, sure, why not?
Okay. So before that, you hadn't done any commentary, or you'd done some?
I hadn't done any commentary. I got asked to do Porsche Super Cup in 2021 or 2. I lose track now. The weekend before my first Super Cup, which would have been my commentary debut, I managed to get a job doing International GT Open and Euro Formula Open commentary the weekend before at Paul Ricard, just as a one-off. And I somehow got called saying, can you do commentary? Are you going to do this? And I went, well, glad you called, because it'd be great to have a bit of a warm-up before going into Formula One to do a support category. So that was technically my first commentary. But up until then, the only kind of commentating I'd done was just done through like YouTube that I'd cobbled together for the purposes of a show reel.
Really?
Yeah.
They must have seen something in the footage you sent, because someone that's literally just pitched up isn't going to have the experience to deliver someone super experienced like Crofty or whoever, so they must have seen something in that footage.
Yeah, that's the thing. It wasn't like I had just pitched up out of nowhere. Maybe when it came to actual commentating, yes, but I'd been around for a while. I'd done a lot of motorsport work. I had been the runner, the work experience boy when like Formula E first started. I'd worked for BBC 5 Live as an assistant producer. I'd done a lot of radio at university level, doing student radio, and I'd done a lot of kind of broadcasting more generally. I just hadn't done any lights out, let's go racing, that kind of thing. So that was just, the door had been opened. And one thing I learned quite early on was just say yes and figure out how to do it later. Yeah. Because I saw that was going to be my break in really properly into the broadcasting sense. I hadn't had a break yet. It was really difficult. No one was going to pick me to be a pit lane reporter. No one was going to pick me to anchor something at 21 years old. This was the foot in the door. Can you do Porsche Super Cup commentary? Yeah, sure. Yeah, absolutely. Fine. 30 drivers? Yeah, sure. No worries. In Monaco? Yeah, absolutely. I'll do it.
Were you like I sense a lot of the time that there's a number 1 and a number 2 commentator, right? So like I see you with what's his name? Bird. Sam Bird. Not Max Bird, that's some Porsche driver. But you kind of kick off with the opening lap and stuff, and you've got like your proper commentator voice on,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
And
yeah.
then he'll butt in a more normal way, if you know what I mean, talking more normally about how the sort of race. I'm not saying he's a bad commentator, but he talks from more of a technical point of view from
Yeah.
a driver's perspective. But like, is that the case? Do you have number one, number two? Like, do you? Because we struggle sometimes. Like, sometimes I'm a bit overpowering for Jordan, or Jordan will ask questions, I'll ask too many questions. You know what I mean? Like, or we'll go to ask a question at the same time. How do you stop yourselves overlapping each other?
Well, it's different in this setup because we're not commentating for a start. But so commentary teams are made up of a lead commentator and a co-commentator. Okay. I'm employed to be the lead commentator, much the same as Crofty is the lead commentator. Martin Brundle is the co-com. I'm the lead commentator for Radio 5 Live, and on this occasion, Sam Bird is my co-commentator. I lead the coverage, basically. I am the one that keeps going, trying to tell the story, amping up the excitement. A good co-commentator will do that as well, but ultimately I'm not a driver and I'm not a racing driver, and I can't give perhaps valid insight into why somebody has crashed or to what's going on the pit wall. That's what Sam or Jolyon Palmer or someone like Mark Priestley brings to the table. And if they're quite good at talking and being a broadcaster well, then double bubble, great stuff. But I'm the one that is able to keep things going. In practice sessions, for instance, it's almost basically like you're hosting a podcast. I'm the one that keeps it moving, focuses on the next talking points, all this kind of stuff. And their job is to feed off the back of you and also say what they're seeing and why something is happening out on track based on their experiences.
Got you. So do you ever find you'd end up talking over each other, or not really? Because we've had this, but like Gus said, we end up starting to, or do you have a process to stop?
I mean, when you first start working with somebody, you kind of got to gauge how you work and build up like a chemistry. But particularly in commentary, sometimes a hand gesture is enough to say that you want to start talking. Or equally, we have these lip mics, which are sort of handheld microphones, which go right up to your mouth.
Seen those, yeah.
And so a good way of saying you're ready to talk now is if, you just put your mic down, then back up, and it's kind of a visual cue for the other person to go, okay, let's wrap things up now. But it happens. It's going to happen. But normally at the start of a race, it's a pretty almost formulaic kind of way. I will take over from as the last car is pulling up at the back of the grid. Then it's all me until turn 4 or whatever, until basically it just starts to quiet down a little bit. And then I'm looking at what's happening at the front, making sure I've nailed that. And then anything I've missed further back or in the midfield, Sam or whoever it is can then pick up on that. And then it's like you're playing a game of tennis basically and just sort of rallying back and forth as well as you can.
Got you.
Do you not have a lot of pressure? Do you not feel a lot of pressure? Like, what if, like you said, you worried about becoming a commentator on Porsche Super Cup when you first started out and stuff, because you're like, oh God, like how am I going to talk the whole time? And what am I going to talk about? What is the kind of, have you got a set strategy for how you're going to talk through a whole race? Because I don't think I could do it.
No, a race is, you can't plan it because you don't know what's going to come up. I know there are certain targets I want to hit, especially in the kind of build up the 5 minutes before a race. I want to make sure we've spoken about so-and-so's got a grid penalty, or let's talk about what a brilliant result, Alpine had in qualifying. What can they do today? I've got in my head like almost a running order of things I want to hit. But equally, you're led by what's happening. So you've just got to go with it. And then I like to think I love racing and motorsport and understand it, so inherently I'm passionate about it and can know what to talk about as well. And I may know the answer to some questions already, but I want to pose those questions to Sam or whoever the co-commentator is so they can answer it, and then we can have a debate and this kind of stuff. But that's more for if the race gets boring and we need to talk, or if like a practice session or whatever, where it literally is like a podcast with just some F1 cars also going around the track.
Yeah.
Because it's practice, let's be honest.
Yeah.
No one really knows what's happening. But in a race, it is, you're trying to tell the story. You're trying to find the excitement, the entertainment. Even if it's really boring out on track, you've just somehow got to find it within you to go, or even if it is the closest battle on track right now is 17th place, you can have a little laugh and a joke about it, but if that's what you're being given, that's what you go to.
So do you find the most testing periods are during like a red flag? That's when I view the race or when we watch it, and there's a massive, some of the broadcasts could be 2-3 hours long if you've got red flag. What do you find it difficult to keep the enthusiasm and energy during that period where all the drivers are chilling in the pit lane, etc.?
I mean, recently, F1 Sao Paulo was tough because in qualifying and the race, it was the mixed conditions, the rain, qualifying was delayed. We're on air. We've got to talk about something. So that is tough for sure. But if you've got a good team around you, you'll be able to find that. And at the end of the day, you're just having a conversation. You're talking about Formula One, which we all love, and we're actually getting paid to do it as a job. So it's almost, that is the pressure of we've got to make sure we know what we're talking about and be able to provide insight to whoever's listening. But equally, when I did my first Porsche Super Cup commentary, Monaco, 30 cars. Actually, no, Monaco, they limit it to 28, I think, or 26. And you know the top 12 in that category. But there's a lot of AM drivers there who are 50, whatever, and they're just having fun racing, and they're often funding so the young guys can come in at the top.
Yeah.
It's very difficult to rock up first race and feel like you know everything. I certainly felt like, oh God, I'm really hoping nothing bad happens. And that's lack of preparation, but equally it's like you've almost got to do one just to rip the Band-Aid off.
Yeah.
But it's Monaco, and I thought, well, it's going to be a boring race. It's probably just going to, whoever starts on pole is probably going to win it. Although Super Cup, you can never be quite sure. And I remember I was doing the commentary with Sean Hollenby, who was my co-commentator. He used to run a team in British touring cars. And they set off, down to turn one, then uphill towards the casino. Then there was a massive crash. Red flags straight away. There's like 8 cars all involved. The road's blocked. Worst case scenario.
I
for
remember
me.
that. Was this Porsche Super Cup?
Yeah.
Monaco 2022.
Yeah. That would have been my first one. Worst case scenario. Let's hope,
sweating.
They've got to remove the cars. The barriers needs to be repaired.
Yeah.
Great. So all the cars come back around. They go in the pit, or they line up. They go in the pit lane, and then when it's bad when the drivers are getting out of the cars.
Yeah.
And so now I'm not even one lap into my first ever race commentary. We've got a red flag, and it's Porsche Super Cup.
Yeah.
And the camera footage is showing these drivers. I know their names. I haven't been able to link all their names with their faces. So there's somebody on screen, and I'm scrambling in my head to think, who the hell is that? Trying to be as generic as possible until maybe someone is able to get a graphic up. But that red flag lasted for a half an hour, and we stayed on air the entire time. Bear in mind, a Porsche Super Cup race is supposed to run for about 30 minutes in general. Yeah. So we have a red flag for half an hour. We are filling, constantly talking. And that's when you've got to dig deep. And that's when you earn your money, basically. Yeah. Then they restart the race and we get a full race in. So we're on air for an hour and a half, pretty much, of Porsche Super Cup, when we should have really been on for 40 minutes max. So that was my first ever commentary. And then I thought, you know what? If I can get through that with no big fumbles, you can survive anything.
100%. Because you haven't got that same support. You haven't got Ted in the pit lane being like, oh, Red Bull changed the new front wing because it's damaged. You're just on your own in a way with that series. So.
Totally. You are in charge of where you go and what you do. And I got on really well with my co-commentator straight away. Also, he had heaps of experience of racing in general. And at that point, we're just talking about, okay, what's a red flag? So you used to be a team boss, Sean. How when you were on the pit wall, how did you sort of deal with the red flag? What's going on in the pit lane right now? And let them talk and provide that insight. Because A, I don't have that insight. But B, that's the perfect opportunity because people love that stuff because you don't often get the chance to hear that, especially during like a live commentary. So that's when you've just got to keep your brain and keep the cogs turning and trying to find every single angle of conversation possible.
You know what? I think people take commentary for granted because I've watched races either where there's a bit of an interesting commentator on that's just clearly mainly kind of lower levels of racing, right? Where they kind of might not know what they're talking about as much. Or if you actually go to a Grand Prix, most of the time they don't actually have commentary in the stands, and it's actually really difficult to know what's going on
100%.
and like be as excited about it. Like sometimes, ironically, watching from home or like in a hospitality, we can hear like all the commentary is good. But I know you can't really comment on this because she works for Sky Sports, but there's one thing that stands out to me, which is like it was Mexico. I think it might have been during a race. It was this year or last year, I think, and it was Danica Patrick. And like she'd taken over, I think one of the first times and probably only time she was in the commentary box. And and the cars were going through turn 1, and it made me realise how important the commentator is, because she sat there and went, "Yeah,
remember this."
She goes, "Yeah, arriving at turn 1 now. It's a really fast section here," and then you can see Karun like hops in like and then hits with like loads of facts and stats about how fast they're arriving, what braking points they've got. So yeah, it makes you very aware of how important having a good commentator is. But in terms of those notes, like being a bit of a professional like yourself or Karun, how well do you have to prepare? Like, do you have notes on all the drivers, what speeds you're arriving at certain corners? Like, what's the set structure for what you're going to fill gaps with if nothing's really happening on track?
Yeah, I mean, I would say people underestimate how difficult it is to commentate a race. A lot of people have a lot of opinions, and it is so difficult to actually do it. Half of it is all in the delivery, and if you're enthusiastic and confident, that will carry you a long way. But you need to know your stuff at the same time. If you don't know something and you're live on air, that is the worst. I have nightmares about that. So I do so much preparation and notes in beforehand. Not that I can read my notes during it, but I do that in the build up. So it's there as a little reminder if I need it, and it's in my subconsciousness. Yeah. Equally, it's unlike any other sport, because you rock up on a Thursday, there's news coming out. Then Friday stuff happens in practice. So it's constantly evolving within the space of 4 days. So the stuff that you were prepping for on a Tuesday, actually it's irrelevant now, because no one cares about that. It's now more important the fact that his gearbox failed in FP2. So what's that going to mean? What is it, an old gearbox, blah, 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 grid penalty, whatever that goes to. But in terms of my prep, it will be looking through all the latest news that's coming out. I have the main sheet I use is back to back, which is every single driver, their best qualifying and race finish at that particular circuit. I will have any key stats and facts about them. I always have, for instance, how many race weekends it's been since Fernando Alonso last stood on the top step of podium. I always have what race is it for Nico Hülkenberg, just in case he gets a podium all of a sudden. I know exactly how many Grand Prix he's done, just so it's there at the touch of a button, basically. Then the same for the teams as well. Have they had any good results there in the past? What's happened to them in the build-up for this race? Obviously, all of the qualifying and driver results from the season so far. And then anything that happens throughout the weekend, I'll keep a track of and know. But ultimately, I suppose that the best scenario and the best test for anybody is you're given a microphone. You start at Red Bull at the end of the pit lane, and you've just got to walk down every single garage and have something insightful to say about every single team. You can't know all there is to know about Max Verstappen and Red Bull, but know nothing about Zhou Guanyu and Sauber. Course, you have got to know, because what happens if actually Zhou Guanyu's suddenly in 5th and is looking on for a good result here, and you've kind of ignored him? Yeah. That's like rookie mistake.
And
You've
you
got
have
to
a
know
lot
everything.
of Chinese fans as well, following that want to know his progress.
100%.
So you almost become a storyteller in a way.
Well, yeah, you are literally, you're narrating, you're telling a story of the race, and you're trying to find peaks and troughs. It's also very technical. Like at the start of the race, you're at 10 out of 10. It's lights out. Although I can't say that, I'm not allowed to. But you've got to be at 10, because if the commentator doesn't have the excitement, the fans don't really have the excitement. Yeah. But you can't be 10 for 56 laps.
No.
You could be 10 for the first couple, then you might dip to a 7, then maybe go down to a 4 or 5 when we're in the crux of it. Then pit stops are happening. Okay, we're back up to 8. It's a bad pit stop, 9.5. Okay, no, they've got away with it. Let's go back down to a steady 6. So you're able to go up and down, telling the story of the race, so you don't, A, sound annoying, B, ruin your voice and ruin your energy, because I'm knackered after a race.
Do you lose your voice ever?
No, thankfully, touch wood, not yet. But I'm knackered after a race because you're putting on a performance, basically. Yeah. You are literally on stage. You have no idea what the lines are. And you're saying what you're seeing and then trying to understand the strategy and help people at home along with what they're seeing, why they're seeing it, why it's important, what this means. And again, it comes back to the prep. Okay, everyone sort of knows that, this is Max Verstappen, however many wins he's on, going for another one here. He's battling Lando Norris. TV director cuts to to the back of the grid, and it's Kevin Magnussen and Lance Stroll going toe-to-toe for 3 laps, and it's actually the best racing we've seen. I think that happened in Japan this year. They were literally racing over plumb last. It was fantastic racing, but you've got to know what's happened to Magnussen this year and what's happening with him in this race, and the same with Stroll. You know, regardless of what you may think in the wider picture, I've almost just got to have an encyclopedic knowledge of every single driver.
So if you want to become a racing driver like some of our lovely guests, and you're not really sure how to start because it seems like you need a lot of money and family connections that know the industry, etc. Well, now you have the perfect opportunity to prove you have what it takes on a completely level playing field. That's why we've created Forsetti. Forsetti is an online platform that guides you on how to start your racing driver journey and helps you develop your skills to climb up the ladder. We host time attacks every single week, and if you're the fastest driver, we put you straight into a car and integrate you in an established esports team racing against some of the best talent in the world. So if you think you're the best thing since sliced bread and you have what it takes, make sure to sign up at forsettirace.com. Link is also in the description. Back to the podcast.
Yeah. And you said, like you said, it's so important to have that energy and kind of also have your energy kind of dip and flow with the race, right? Because you can't just be at 10 the whole time. Have you had to coach your commentator voice into yourself, if you know what I mean? Because it's not your normal voice.
No. It's
You're not
an
going
elevated.
to the cafe like, can I have a cappuccino, please?
That would be insufferable.
In the car with your mum at a traffic light. It's all eyes to the light.
Oh god. Yeah, no. That would be something, wouldn't it? It's you're putting on a performance. That's how I look at it. I trained as an actor. I feel like I'm playing the part of a commentator, basically.
Yeah.
And now when I step into that commentary booth, headset on, right, I'm an F1 commentator.
Do you feel that background's really helped your career now?
Massively. Because I just feel feel confident. This is my first full season commentating Formula One. And this time last year, I stepped up kind of halfway through the year, and I got to the end of the year, and I felt like I was really struggling, and I was feeling really like insecure about was I any good or not? And I felt like a driver under pressure for their seat the next year. I was like, I don't think I've got this.
Similar
seat
pressure.
Yeah, I was like,
in a weird way.
In the UK, there's 3 seats for a lead commentator. That's it.
Yeah.
As jobs go, not many are taking those ones.
Yeah.
So I feel privileged to even be sat in one. But then there comes a lot of pressure to do a good job and keep hold of it, because there's so many talented commentators out there who are all doing support series and coming up through different routes, doing sports cars, whatever it might be. And at the end of the day, it's out of my control if I keep the seat or not. I've got to do as good a job as I can, but I don't have any control if I get the job next year. I have no contract, really. I just sign on for 24 races and then, well, maybe see you next year. Let me know.
I think people will gain like they do with Martin Brundle. Like if and when he leaves, there'll be lots of people sad that he's left.
Yeah.
But they have the reason they'll never be sacked unless they do something awful, right? Because they are like the voice of Sky Sports F1, and like Crofty was as well. Is he leaving?
I don't know. Not sure.
Anyway, that's just speculation. But no,
I know nothing.
But my point is, like, you'll build and have done now. Like I said, I recognise your voice straight away when I saw that TikTok pop up. But I'd never seen your face before.
Yeah, it helps when you go viral. That is handy.
Yeah.
It's a great video.
You'll then gain a bit of a loyal audience. I think that's going to be so important to keep your job, if you know what I mean. Because once the audience are they think Sky, they think Harry Benjamin, and they think Martin Brundle, whatever, that's when you'll really keep your audience. But I suppose you're always going to have your lovers and haters, aren't you? We have it on the podcast.
Absolutely.
All the time.
People, you almost laugh at some of the comments you get, but I'm like, feel free to hate comment in the Instagram section, because that helps the
algorithm.
Yeah. So keep it coming.
You know what? We've learned to love it as well.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've ever looked through our comments, but it's like it could be
That's
like
my research.
It's
before
really,
this.
it's really rough. It's like we'll be talking about like a really interesting thing. It's got loads of likes, and then like most people's comments is about like my long face, or like, who are these 2 dickheads? They're like Drive to Survive fans, blah blah blah. I was just like, oh,
They know nothing about racing. Yeah,
it's funny you mentioned Drive to Survive. That's almost that has contributed to what we've got, because it's put so many more eyes on the sport, and now, which is great in one respect, because it gives so many more opportunities for people here, there, and everywhere. But also, it's kind of brought it into the mainstream now. So there is so much intensity, and as a result, criticism of what comes from that from people who just love to be a bit of a keyboard warrior. But you do have to that's a whole other side of the job that you have to deal with too. But I think it helps. Coming back to the doing the drama school and acting thing, I think that helps me massively, because I never see it. I don't see myself as just a Formula One commentator or a motorsport commentator. I'm always trying to see a bigger picture as more of a broadcaster. And in this current climate, I'm a freelance jobbing broadcaster essentially, and my expertise is motorsport and Formula One, which was a massive advantage and helped that I actually do like the sport and was a fan of it. But also I'm aware of how important Instagram is and how important having a presence online is, because that makes you an asset to potential employers. Similar when you're a driver these days, if you have a big following, great, because then the team's like, oh good, we get more eyes on our team, more eyes on our sponsors, you have more opportunity to getting sponsors. It's the same copy and paste process.
It helps massively with getting sponsorship.
Oh, massive. Yeah, if you can show you have a certain amount of reach. I was going to touch on, you said you become almost a character when you become a commentator, and there are actually simulations. There are similarities to driving a car as well.
Yeah.
You can't be passive. You can't be in the commentary room like, right, okay, here comes Lando Norris. Same going into qualifying as a racing driver. You have to put yourself in a certain mindset to perform. So I guess there is a similarity there.
And it's performing under pressure as well.
Yeah.
What I've found is like, last couple of podcasts, me and Jordan have had a little bit of a debrief, and we've been like, you know what, I'm forgetting that these are pre-recorded. Like, I'm now that, not that we're like gaining like loads of following, but I can start to see a bit of traction.
Yeah.
So then I start to feel more pressure as we have guests on it. Obviously, we're getting better at it, especially when we got people sat in the seat that we've never met before. Because at the start we had people that we knew. Or
well, that's how they all start.
Yeah. I was like, you get that performing under pressure, which I can do well in a race car, and we've kind of trained ourselves, me and John, to do that over the years. But then when it comes to performing under what's not even that much pressure on a pre-recorded podcast, I'm putting loads of pressure on myself to come up with a really good question. Great question. Oh no, I need to come back with. They've just finished talking. Fuck, what am I going to say?
No,
I'm really overthinking it.
That's because you're stepping out your comfort zone.
Yeah.
Like, this is actually something. This is very different for you guys who are going up the driver route. But that's another thing. Like, I suppose a driver coming up now compared to even 10 years ago probably goes through so many different things. It's not just about how fast you are in a car. Obviously, that's pretty crucial. Yeah. But the media training you've got to do, the being good on social media. Have you got a TikTok account? Are you jumping on this trend?
Yeah.
10 years ago, you never had to worry about that. But now I feel like there is a pressure to do that, and it's part and parcel of the job.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like, even there was an era like Vettel never had social media, like when he was in Formula One. I don't know if you can
Kimi
do
didn't until the later days as well.
Yeah. Like, if you don't have social media now, it's almost seen as a disadvantage.
Unless you've got a lot of money behind you.
Or a lot of money.
Yeah.
I don't think I would post that much if I wasn't doing the job I did right now. Yeah. I see my Instagram as an extension of my job. It's part of my what am I going to do this? It is. That's exactly it. It's just CV. That's what you show to people who are going to employ you. Whether that you can get jobs for you can sell your Instagram basically. People pay you to post stuff now, and it's like, well, that's another bit of income. Like F1 commentary when you're starting out is not the most lucrative of jobs, because you're in a very privileged position. And look, I love what I do, but equally, you've got to be able to live in the months where Formula One isn't on as well. So the season's getting longer and longer. But what is it now? December. So December, January, February. That's 3 months of. Yeah. I haven't got any regular work for that.
So I was going to ask, that was a question I was going to ask. Before we ask I want to know about the reality of being a commentator. I want the day-to-day of the weekends, and also like when you're not racing, or similar to us, what are you doing? I want to get that, but before we do that, I wanted to go back to something we touched on a second ago. Have you never had a moment when you're performing under pressure where you're like, I've really effed up here, like, or you have a blank and you're just like, I don't know what to say?
So far, I've never had a shocker. I've gotten things wrong. Absolutely. I've identified a car wrong or a driver wrong.
But you can't be afraid to do that, right? That's where
in the heat of the moment, you it's a quick thing, and then you realise you've gone wrong. The worst commentary, or what I felt, where I thought I'm going to lose my job after this.
Really?
I got asked to do F1 TV in 2022, one race, the Japanese Grand Prix. It would be it was my fourth ever Formula One commentary that year. I'd done 3 for BBC Radio, and this was my 4th for F1 TV. And it was the race where it was raining, and it was when Max Verstappen became champion. But did he become champion? Because then no one was sure, because they restarted the race and no one was sure what the points allocation was going to be and if he'd done enough. And so you go with what you're seeing on screen. And when you work for F1 TV, you're in the inner sanctum, basically, because it's Formula One operated. So you in your ear, you're hearing the gallery, the director plumbed in directly into Formula One. And at that moment, you're kind of trusting the people around you. I'm the most inexperienced one there. It's my voice on the line, basically, going, Max Verstappen is a world champion. Yeah. Thankfully, he was in the end. But it was. I thought, oh, how did the other commentators call that? And I listened to every other commentator and how they called it, and we all thought the same. And I thought, thank God for that, because I really thought that was it for me. I was like, if I bugger this up, you're done. If it's a championship moment and you bugger that up, done. Maybe not done, but you feel like you're done.
Yeah, of course. You've got to be constantly on to the next thing. If there's a small little incorrect bit of grammar or something, you can't be dwelling on it.
Yeah, you're always doing incorrect grammar. I mean, I am as well, because it's the way you talk. I'm also quite, well, I say I'm quite young. I'm 27, so
definitely for a commentator, very young.
Yeah.
But everyone thought you were middle-aged.
Well, exactly.
Right?
Everyone thought I was like 50 or something. I'd take that as a compliment. But I'm working with people who are twice my age, who've had 20 years of experience in the sport, and who are, some proper journalists. I'm not a journalist, but I'm also I'm a Gen Zer technically. So I watch a lot of TikTok. That I'm part of that generation. So it's actually quite interesting how I approach things compared to who I'm alongside, whether it's the co-commentator or our expert journalist or whatever. So I have a very different way of speaking sometimes, and that can sometimes be a bit jarring, I think, for people who aren't used to it.
And with that, do you ever get imposter syndrome with your job?
Yeah, all the time. Yeah, absolutely.
Because you're sat next to, I can imagine you, one, as a racing driver, like if I was, why do I keep forgetting his name? Sam Bird, right? If you're Sam Bird, I would be sat there okay, I'm a driver, I know lots about this, but I'm not a commentator. Do you know what I mean? I'd be thinking, I'm out of my depth here. Whereas you're not worried about the performance side of things in terms of being able to speak well and all of that stuff on camera or on with the microphone on live TV. But you're thinking, I'm not really a driver. I don't really know about this stuff. I can imagine that would go through your head.
When you first start, absolutely. You quickly get over it because you build a rapport with these people.
Yeah.
The best and worst experience of my life, it wasn't the worst experience, but I got the opportunity this year to commentate Sky Sports F1 with Martin Brundle. For me, Martin Brundle is the voice that I grew up with. Murray Walker was a bit before my time, really, and obviously Crofty is a big part of that. But Martin Brundle has been the constant presence from grid walk to commentary box. So to then be told at the age of, I was 26, that you're going to lead the Sky Sports F1 commentary. Your co-commentator is Martin Brundle, by the way. Cool. Okay. Sure, great.
Yeah.
That's when Imposter Syndrome is at an all-time high.
Yeah.
He was absolutely amazing. Made me feel so at ease straight away. But in the back of your head, you're still going, when you're live on air, I'm commentating a race with Martin Brundle. What is going on? And I'm probably a bit on the reserve side at that stage. Whereas when I'm in my BBC radio seat, I'm now confident enough to be able to almost shut a co-com up and go, you're talking too much, we need to focus on this now.
Yeah.
Whereas in that booth, I'm like, you're Martin Brundle, you can do what you want.
Yeah.
I'll speak when spoken to.
Yeah, he is a huge legend. I'm in the same boat. Listening to him, he articulates the drivers in the F1 car so much better than I can think of. Like the way he articulates a car on the limit, but also for a broad audience as well. So he's so analytical, but at the same time, really good for the common viewer, as in the regular viewer. So he is a legend.
And what I've heard from him is that he, unlike you and any commentator I have spoken to, and even Louise, who's not a commentator, she's like pundit/journalist, they prepare. She said, even though a lot of my interviews or whatever are off the cuff and things like this, she said, I pre-prepare it, and then I've got at least an idea in my head of what to say, where to go, whatever. But Martin, I heard him saying that in a podcast actually, that he never makes notes. He just says,
nothing.
He says what he sees. Yeah.
Wow.
Thing is, though, there's absolutely, but also you've got to, and what I always use the term air miles, and go, the more you do it, the more you're actively doing it. When it becomes your everyday, you don't need all the notes, because it is literally just you're waking up, you're having these conversations on the regular, you're in the paddock every weekend almost, you're seeing it all. And that breeds confidence. And when you're somebody as connected as Martin Brundle or Louise Goodman, you know, you know. But it comes back to exactly what Louise said. I will make all these notes just to give me an idea of where I could go and the possibilities when speaking with somebody or when doing a commentary. Also, Formula One is cyclical. Things happen. The same things happen again and again and again. So it is sometimes copy and paste, and you go, oh, hang on, this happened in Monaco last week as well, or whatever. And so it's the same stuff, the same kind of crashes, but it's still live sport, and you never really know what's around the corner. So I still say preparation is key. But when you're somebody like Martin, you just have that undeniable skill that you can just talk and people respect it.
And someone like Martin, what I've noticed with him and where I quite like him, I might be a bit biased because I'm a driver, not in Formula One, but I'm a driver. And as a driver, it's annoying sometimes when you can watch a commentator and they've given a completely incorrect opinion on a crash or something like that, where we know who's at fault or whether it's a racing incident. Usually as drivers, fans have completely different views, and you know, because they don't understand what's going on in the helmet of that driver, right? But what I've noticed with Martin is that he's quite opinionated on how certain things happen if it's pretty black and white. How do you go about being opinionated with certain drivers and their actions on or off track?
On a live commentary, I'm always a bit hesitant to give my opinion, because I'm always, at the end of the day, who am I when you've got Martin Brundle, Karun Chandhok, Anthony Davidson, Sam Bird, Jolyon Palmer, guys who've actually driven Formula One cars, raced at top level. They will know more. So I will always then almost become kind of more host and go, what did you make of that? And I feel people would rather hear from the expert driver or whoever the pundit is than me. But sometimes it is black and white. I've watched enough motorsport to know when a driver has literally barged someone off the road or not. And you go, well, that's pretty much a slam dunk penalty. Yeah. You can have those incidences. I mean, there was a recent one, it's slightly different, but Lando Norris getting the stop-go penalty in Qatar. And you know, that was detrimental to his race. Yes, harsh penalty, harshest. But the rule is it's a double yellow flag. You've got to be prepared to stop, and that he wasn't prepared to stop and he didn't lift. So slam dunk penalty. That to me is not an opinion. That's just a statement of fact. But then some people will go, well, hang on a minute, blah, 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 blah. Who are you to say that? So you're treading a fine line when you're, I think, the lead commentator. I'm always on the hesitant side to give too much of an opinion. I always go to my co-commentator to give that if they feel like they can. Equally, we do a podcast for the Checkered Flag, plug that, after every race. That is where I might give more of an opinion, where I've had more time to consider it, watch all the angles, hear what other people are saying, that kind of thing. That's when I can give more of an informed opinion. In the heat of the moment, live on air, that's difficult to give an informed opinion of.
Yeah, I'd like to get your thoughts on this year's season, actually.
Yeah.
Overall, who has been the standout driver in your eyes?
I mean, it's hard to look past somebody like Max Verstappen. You know, I know that's maybe an easy answer, a cop-out answer to give. But even when the chips are down and all of the off-track noise that was going on with him and the team, to be able to still finish second in a car that had no right to finish second at one stage in the season, you know, places like Zandvoort or even Imola when Norris was really catching him, that's when Verstappen's talent outmarches his machinery. And to keep kind of his head throughout the whole thing. Yes, there was all those conversations about the driver guidelines and they're being changed as a result. But at the end of the day, he was driving to what he thought were the written guidelines, and now they're being changed. So you can't really have a go at him for that.
That's where he's smart. He's so smart with the rule book. He knows it so off by heart. Even, because there wasn't a rule. I'm interested to see what the FI does with this whole rule of not being able to, when you have a car ahead, that you have the line, you have the, you can just run off. That's what I mean. I'm interested to see what they do there, because that's what, like Mexico, for example.
It's as long as you're ahead
at the apex.
Yeah, that's it. He knows the rule. So it's not black and white right now, but it sort of is in the rules, where it's like, okay, so Max has read the rule. The rule is basically, put it simply, I'm not reading it out obviously in front of me, but it's basically, if you're overtaking the car ahead, you're going up the inside, say into a left-hander. If your car is slightly ahead at the apex, you have the line, and you basically have the authority to run that car off the track.
You have right of way, essentially,
So if you force another car off, you won't get a penalty. If you're behind and at the apex of the corner, which is basically like the curb, the middle of the corner, and then you do that, you get a penalty for it. Max knows that, and he knew that in Mexico. He said after the race, like, the first one was a bit iffy, that was a bit like, oh, that's naughty. And then the next one, when he went for Lando at like the next left-hander, was just like suicidal.
It was bad.
Yeah, that was interesting. I was watching that, like, not as a Max or Lando fan, respect them both, but I was watching it and I was like, Jesus, I was like, that's bad.
Yeah.
You know what though? Is there not a part of you that loves that and wants a little bit more of it? Because,
there is.
Okay, Formula 1's been great this season. Back to your question, I think it's been brilliant. I think it'll be even better next year.
It's gonna be good.
I think 2025 will be one of the all-time best seasons we'll have. But right at the end of this year, we had this kind of weird, brawl between Verstappen and George Russell. I want more of that. I want more outrageous stuff going on.
More like other sports.
Exactly, because it brings out the personalities.
NASCAR.
It's fun. It's fun for us.
Yeah,
because we get to have a chat. We're not going on about, Pirelli brought the hardest compounds this weekend. It's like, no, Verstappen's out for blood this weekend because Russell forced him off the track last time. Yeah, Russell got a penalty for it, but he's not happy. And that's kind of what I want.
Yeah. I think we said this in the Louise podcast as well, where I was giving my opinion that they have to be two reserves, and I gave an example of, we had Enzo, who's Ollie Behrman's coach, on the podcast, and he's Liam Lawson's coach as well, and he said
he's doing all right then, isn't he?
Yeah, well, he said that he'll have it's gone well from the last couple of years, but he said that not just them specifically, but in general, they'll go in for an interview, be so vanilla, so like, won't give any opinion, and they'll still be pulled aside after by the team and be like, this was wrong, you needed to say this, you needed to say that. I just think we all need to, we can't have drivers like throwing helmets at each other and stuff like that. I mean, that would be great TV, but I do want, if they're annoyed at each other, I want a Max and Russell fight. Do you know what I mean? Like verbal fight, not a literal one.
It's tricky with young drivers, isn't it? Because they come in and this is their big opportunity, and they want to impress the team. They want to keep their noses clean, and they want to do a good job. But even like Liam Lawson came in, Austin again this year, and he had a bit of a sort of spat with Alonso and Perez, and that was quite, hello Liam, you're being a bit feisty here. I like it.
Honestly, I wish in the press conferences, instead of such the vanilla answers they give, I wish the questions could be, you got this rivalry with Russell, and for Max to say something like, he's got another thing coming, like, you know what I mean, like, it just to have that, not the same as boxing, but just that sort of build up to the race where there's this, I love a rivalry. So
just be allowed to be a bit of a showman, right?
Yeah.
Everyone loves a showman, but maybe we love it so much because we don't see it too often. So, it's quite nice when you have a character come along, like a Kimi Räikkönen or whatever. We haven't got one of them around, and he was such a unique character.
Yeah.
But if it had a grid full of them, I'm not sure that would be great either, because sometimes you do just need like a proper answer from somebody.
Contrast.
You're like,
I guess,
God, okay, here we go. But there's a balance to be had. I understand it from the team and the PR perspective. I do. But equally, the little glimpses we've had this year of some spats and rivalries just show us how good and entertaining it can be. Formula One, for me, is first and foremost an entertainment series, and then it's a sport, because people tune in to watch good racing, and that's where the entertainment comes from.
Yeah.
But that's what keeps you engaged for the full length of the race. Why do you think we brought in sprints? Only entertainment reasons.
The radio messages have been a massive thing.
Oh, so good.
Because you see the true emotion of the driver in all the press conferences, all the behind the scenes. They have this PR sort of hat on, but the radio messages, that's who they are. There's no friends on track. They're enemies.
Yeah.
So I think the radio message has been amazing.
But they'll all have dinner at the end of the year and all be happy. Yeah.
What I loved in
Russell, have you seen the memes of Max Verstappen and George Russell meme at the dinner they all had at the end of the year?
Well, Lando said yes, the two you're thinking of sat.
Yeah, brilliant.
Yeah.
He's stirring the pot.
so
I'm all
good.
for that.
They should have told them both to come at a later time and left 2 seats right next to I would have loved to have had an insight of them sat next to each other.
Yeah.
But I was going to say something about near the end of the season as well with Russell and Max as well, but I can't remember what it was.
Because he's someone I could see being a world champion pretty quickly, Russell. I think he's got that in
Well,
him.
it'll be really interesting. The reason why this year's been great is because we've had a lot of fights up and down the field. Yes, okay, and Lando Norris gave us a little bit of hope that, could the championship go all the way to the wire? That didn't happen in the end. That's what stops it from being an all-time belter.
Yeah.
But I think it also sets us up for such a good year next year because Lewis Hamilton's going to Ferrari. What on earth is going to happen there? Is he still got it? Is Charles Leclerc going to wipe the floor with him? Is he going to be rejuvenated, Lewis Hamilton? Now we're going to see him back to his best.
Yeah.
What's going to happen there? George Russell now, is he an absolute rocket ship? Is he a superstar? Because he has been taking it to Hamilton, beats him hands down over one lap in qualifying. Is George Russell an absolute superstar? What about Kimi Antonelli? This wonder kid, is he a wonder kid? And then you've got Behrman, you've got Liam Lawson, who's probably going to end up in the Red Bull imminently. You've got people like Ocon going to Haas, which is not headline news, but it's a big shake-up. You've got Doohan coming in. You've got lots of rookies in the field. It's a stable regulation year, so everyone's only going to close up and game on.
Yeah, it's going to be tight because it's the last year on the regs, isn't it?
I'm so excited. Like everything you just touched on. One, I hope. Again, I'm not really I respect Lewis, and to be honest, over the years, regardless of what you think of him as a person, I've always supported him in the races, especially obviously when he was winning. But for him to go to Ferrari, which is a team the one team I could never imagine him at, right? Ferrari, but he's there. You've got 2 drivers. Lewis is never going to settle for a number 2 contract. So we know they're both going to be number 1 drivers, right? Because Charles is also the kind of Ferrari wonder kid as well. I wonder, are they going to butt heads? Is Lewis going to get his mojo back? Because I feel like as a driver, I can relate to, I'm not Lewis Hamilton, but I can relate to being in a car that you kind of know struggles to win or can't win. So you kind of just lose your faith. Whereas when you're in a car, you know it can do pole position. You know it can win the race. That's when you really get the fire in your belly. You're fired up. I'm so excited to see what Lewis does next year. And like you said, it's only going to be closer. So McLaren are still going to be good. Red Bull have actually a bit of catching up to do within the off season. So I don't care if Max wins it again next year. I just want it to go to the wire.
That's all we want. That's all we want. I'm exactly the same. I don't care who wins a race. I don't care who wins the title, as long as it's a good fight all the way to the end. Because then we'll win, basically, because we're having a hell of a season. That you don't know what's going to happen every single race. But for Lewis Hamilton next year, I think he will be revitalized. I think especially when he signed his Ferrari contract before the start of this season and still had a whole year with the team that he's leaving. They had so many great memories together, obviously, but I don't think they ever really recovered after 2021. No, and I think they fell out of love with each other, really. They're not getting this revenge of an 8th world title. It's not going to happen. And I think it's best actually for both to have this kind of breakup, basically. And I think this is what's going to keep Hamilton in the sport longer as well, for a start. Maybe next year might be a bit of a learning year to get to grips with how Ferrari operate, because we know that can be a tricky team to integrate yourself in. But then he's joined at the right time, because it's 1 year before regulation change, and Ferrari could well be the team that goes to the top of the pile.
Do we know that has he brought anyone to Ferrari? I don't think it was
no one may. He's not allowed to, I don't believe. A lot of people thought, is Bono going to go? But he's not. He's sort of got changing his role slightly within Mercedes. But I think I wonder if he tried to pinch people, but we'll never really know. But I think he's going to. He's got to live in Italy. He's going to have to.
I heard he's going
get to grips with Italian.
Yeah, I wonder if he's learning Italian.
Well, that's one big thing with Ferrari. So, like, Enzo Behrman's coach. And part of the reason I think a lot of people have noticed this, Behrman doesn't have like a solid English accent.
No.
And it happens to a lot.
For the Essex boy.
Yeah, the bloke from Chelmsford. He's it's a bit confused. Like, yes, he sounds English, but he speaks like
similar to Russell, I think.
You know when like a foreign person who speaks good English speaks to you in English, and it's clearly not like that. I'm not saying it's not his first language, but there's a bit of jumpy, a bit of like ums and ahs in there. Like
it's like when someone goes to an international school.
Yeah,
it's a bit. I've got friends who are like that. Who it's kind of like it's an international accent almost.
Yeah,
because they've been in so many different countries and they're almost being brought up half Italian.
But
and it affects how you talk in real life.
Yeah, so Enzo said, coming back to it, he said Behrman is like he's living in Italy. They basically live even in and amongst each other. They've got Italian lessons actually in their schedule.
Oh wow!
And they do they have their sim, their Italian lessons, etc., and they're properly integrated in Italy and with Ferrari. So I think
it's intense.
I've never imagined Lewis to kind of bow down to that kind of, he's like, I am my own person, blah blah blah. But yes, he is respectful. But I never imagined him like going to Ferrari, learning Italian, integrating himself within this team. But we'll see. We'll see next year.
The first photo of him in merch will go viral.
Oh my god! I mean, didn't Ferrari's like share price rocket up as soon as he signed? Yeah, crazy.
They made their money back on his immediately.
Harry, so give us an idea for the viewers as well. An idea on this. Is it 24 weekends of the year in F1?
Yeah.
24. Now, a lot of people will think you rock up, do a bit of prep, get in the commentary booth, fly home. But give people an idea of the intensity and how much time goes into it on the build-up and also afterwards.
So there's two different kinds of weekend for a start. This year, I did 21 races for BBC Radio Formula One. So doing Formula One commentary for the radio. So very different style of commentary for a start. You've got to be way more descriptive. A lot of those we do remotely from the UK.
Really?
So we're not actually in the paddock.
Okay.
That is a cost-saving sustainability method. And radio, you can get away with it more too. So on a Friday morning, I'll get there 2 hours before free practice one starts. I'll set up the commentary box. I'll make sure I'm happy. I'll chat with my producer about kind of what I want to talk about in practice, because I treat practice as essentially a podcast with some F1 cars going on in the background, the occasional update of what's going on. Lewis Hamilton's just gone third, by the way. But we're talking about this Red Bull situation, whatever. That'll be FP1. Then there's usually a couple of hours in between that, and I'll again make sure I've taken any notes of what's happened during FP1, anything interesting. But normally it's quite an easy process when you're sort of doing it remotely. There's a bit of waiting around, to be honest, in the middle, because you've done all your prep in the build up to the weekend. So I start prepping on a Tuesday, or Tuesday through to Thursday is sort of an evolution of my prep, and that is sitting down and making sure.
One sec, just battery.
Is it battery?
Where were we?
So that's essentially the weekend. There's a lot of waiting around actually in between sessions. But of course, my prep starts on the Tuesday through to Thursday, and it's an evolution throughout the days, watching the press conferences, keeping an eye on any big headlines that are coming out, and just making sure you're staying on top of everything. Then you actually come to being at the racetracks. I did 3 for Sky Sports F1 this year, all at trackside. I do 7 races trackside for the BBC as well. So we do go to the races too. And it depends when you fly out, because you've got to factor in obviously flight time on a Wednesday or a Tuesday, getting out there. We'll do a preview show podcast on a Thursday. Want to get the commentary box set up, find out where it is for a start. Sometimes it's an absolute schlep from the rest of the paddock. Walking up and down the paddock as well, getting your bearings, bumping into people. And that's the best prep. Comes back to talking what Martin Brundle does. It's just having conversations with people and talking to that engineer from Red Bull, and him giving you a nice little tidbit that you can use in your commentary later on. All that kind of stuff. And then you rock up, make sure you're there before the session start, and then away you go. And then it all comes to a close quite quickly on a Sunday after the race. We've got to take everything down. BBC, we're quite a small team, so we all kind of help out with that. Our producer unplugs all the bits and bobs, and we go away and self-produce sometimes and record our review podcast that we do somewhere in the paddock, debrief on the race. For the BBC, I have to do a lot of external things for other BBC networks, like we do a wrap for the BBC World Service, 5 Live Breakfast. Sometimes I have to be on Radio 1 Newsbeat or Radio 4 Today Show, all that kind of stuff. So you're a bit of a dog's body for the rest of the BBC in that front. So you've got to make sure you've got your 30 seconds of spiel for summing up the race, all planned and done. And then it's pack everything up, normally run to the airport and try and catch a flight back, get back Sunday night, Monday, try and have off, try and relax on a Monday, and if it's a back-to-back race weekend, then you're straight back into it on a Tuesday.
What's the reality of I like to talk with drivers, especially in F2, F3, and give my perspective on Porsche Super Cup as well. Fuck's sake.
Oh, was that one gone as well?
What does that say?
Temperature. Too hot.
Yeah, so I like to get an idea with F2, F3, Porsche Super Cup drivers, like people on the support package who's not actually in the glitz and glam of F1 because they're quite separate, of like the reality of what you're doing, because everyone views the whole thing as glitz, glam, best hotels, going clubbing with Lando Norris. What's it actually like for a commentator working on the Formula One weekend? It's
not glamorous at all. I mean, sometimes there'll be like a fun little party you get invited to or a media thing that you can go along to, but I'll speak for the BBC radio experience. We don't have any kind of base when we're there, so we're in with them in the media canteen if there is one. Sometimes there isn't. Monaco is actually the worst because if you're telly, you have your TV compound and you have more budget, and they have their own lunches and they have amazing people who are production assistants and coordinators who basically sort your life out, and you're great with them. But with us, it's a lot more. We're a team of 4 sometimes. Radio's much smaller budgets. Monaco, there's nowhere to go apart from the media center. There's nothing to eat either. So you're lucky if you get given like a basic ham sandwich, or in Monaco, go into the grandstands and just try and line up in one of the kiosks and spend an absolute fortune on a baguette or something. So and the commentary boxes are often really small and cramped. And I'm a big guy. I'm 6'5", so that's always like one thing to navigate as well. You're squeezing yourself into this tiny box. Sometimes you have the best view in the world. Sometimes you have the worst view in the world, and it's like, well, this is pointless. But like places like Japan, Monaco is actually a good view. Japan's the best view of a commentary box. You see almost the entire circuit. It's brilliant. Really? And Silverstone's really good setup too. Like actually, you're looked after quite nicely there. But there are some of the old school circuits where the facilities aren't always quite as modern. It's a bit of a trek. The commentary box is miles away. It's a bit rickety. It's not very glamorous. Hotel, box standard hotel. Might be an hour away from the track, so you got to get up in the morning, drive in, make sure you're there, carry all your bags, all that kind of stuff. It's not, we're not the drivers are very well catered for, obviously, but even those around them within the team, the mechanics and engineers, it's probably a very similar story. In fact, they have it harder because the mechanics might have to repair a car, spend 18 hours repairing a car and then come back in 5 hours time for the next day, or whenever they're forced to get out of the paddock. So it's not glamorous. There are absolutely some amazing perks, do not get me wrong. It's a lot of fun, but it's not sunshine and roses.
Everyone's like so passionate but also like suffering at the same time in a way, like not like red-eyed.
It's and 24 now races. It's a long, I know everyone's like I was saying 24 weekends, but it's not, because you start on a Tuesday.
24 weeks, isn't it?
Yeah,
really?
It pretty much is, and it's a lot of flight time as well. So dealing with jet lag back and forth can be really difficult. The last 3 races of the year, I didn't go to all 3, but just getting over Vegas was quite tough, for the jet lag. That race is on super late in the day in Vegas. So you're not starting work until like 10, 11 o'clock at night, but you've been up all day. So then you're not getting back to the hotel till like 3, 4 a.m. and then you're getting up at like 9 the next day. Yeah. So, and doing that for pretty much a solid week takes it out of you, and especially when you're a commentator, then you've got to have the energy to do it all. Look, I don't want to be woe is me about it, but that stacks up. And then if you're a mechanic or a PR or whatever, you go to Vegas, then you're going to Qatar, then you're going to Abu Dhabi, back to back. You're all kinds of messed up with your jet lag. So you just want to get to the end of the season and not be ill or something with a cold or whatever you picked up from the flight.
When you're doing F1 commentary, you touched on it there. When you're in the commentary box, sometimes you can see the whole track. But are you looking mostly at basically the monitor in front of you that's showing the race footage? Because that's what the fans are actually seeing. That's what the viewers are seeing. Because if you're commentating on stuff that's happening outside the commentary box, that must be a bit weird to get used to, because you could be seeing an overtake that's happening into turn one out of the commentary box, but it's not happening on the TV, so you've got to kind of ignore it.
Also, the TV pictures are on the slightest of delay as well, so it's always a bit disconcerting when sometimes the commentary box is on the main straight and you can see all the cars lining up for the start of the race, and I'm doing it's all eyes to the lights and foot to the floor. But I can hear the cars have already gone on the track in front of me, so I can see all these specks moving, but we're still on the fourth light on the TV screen. So it's a bit weird trying to sort of get your head around that. You almost don't want to see it. You just want to focus on the TV pictures. That is what we're looking at, especially radio, because people who aren't seeing it, they are listening in their cars or whatever, so you're being really descriptive, arcing their way through the right hander onto the brakes, down through the gears, quick left, quick right, that kind of thing. The sun shines down, the shadow from the trees, all that kind of stuff. You don't say that on TV because people can see it. So both you're reliant on the pictures to tell the story, but also nowadays we get so much data as well that we've got to be hot on the timing screens, get about 3 or 4 timing screens, all with different information, including like race control messages and stuff like that. So we get a lot given to us, which is quite good. But then actually being able to dart your eyes all on it in the heat of the moment, that takes a bit of skill, and sometimes it doesn't always work well.
Yeah, for sure. So you actually touched on it earlier when you were about to say it's lights out and away we go, and you stopped yourself. So you have a new one. How's it go?
I say it's all eyes to the lights and foot to the floor, which I'm aware is not the exact mechanicals of how they go racing, but it visually, for a radio perspective, you paint the picture.
Sounds good. Yeah.
And it buys you time. It buys you a bit of time. I don't finish. By the time I finish that, they're already moving, so I can then quickly just scan what the hell's gone on. Yeah. So same reason Crofty does it. Same reason most commentators have a little starting phrase, purely because it buys you some time, and you're not just going, "Oh, we're racing. Oh, it's the start from Norris.
Yeah,
I think that is Sonoda's had a port." You have it gives you that half a millisecond just to keep your eye on what's happened.
With you, got you.
I just want to ask one more question
before the
BBC.
I'll get it ready.
Oh,
we've got a challenge.
Okay.
I just wanted to ask. So when you're actually outside of F1, say off season, for example, what the hell are you doing? Like
nothing.
Day to day,
absolutely nothing. I'm coming to do podcasts like this.
Oh, right.
Yeah, that is shows.
No, I mean
so much time to kill.
Yeah, I mean I'm picking up other work. I do other broadcasting outside of motorsport as well. I do podcasts that I produce myself and create. I work on my own like social stuff and try and lay the foundations for work the following year. But equally, I'm quite good at having time off. Like I'm very happy to not do anything, and also like get my life in order as well. Like your life admin stops when you're doing a motorsport season, so it's actually quite handy to just have a bit of time to like I'm moving places at the moment, so that is a massive overhaul. So then trying to actually find the time to do that, this is quite handy for me. I'm happy to have a few weeks off, and then it's Christmas, but then it comes around sooner than you think, because suddenly it's pre-season testing, and we're previewing the year at the beginning of Feb, and then they're doing this big launch event at the O2 now for all the liveries, and then it's pre-season testing, and then I fly to Melbourne. So it comes by quicker than you think.
And then one last thing, I promise. What advice would you give to a young man or woman wanting to be in your position now as a Formula One commentator?
It's hard. I don't envy you. I would say the best thing you can do is put your own content out there, create your own content. If you want to be a commentator, put little clips of you commentating up on Instagram, up on TikTok. That is the best way. And start introducing yourself to people over email, whatever it is. I had no contacts when I first started out. I've got no connection to motorsport before I embarked on it. I would simply I think Formula E had just started, and I waited for the end credits on the ITV show and found out who the executive producer was, and I did a bit of research on Google, guessed their email, first name dot last name at whatever the organisation is.
Try 3 or 4.
Try 3 or 4. And I just would introduce myself, and I would never ask for a job. I would just tell them what I wanted to do. I'd identify a piece of their work that I really enjoyed and showed them that I'd done my homework on them and that I actually genuinely cared and had a passion. And then I'd be like, if you know of any opportunities, if there's a chance to shadow or look around or just gain advice, that's the best thing I would do. An amalgamation of all of that. It doesn't happen. Some people, it happens overnight. You know, you become a TikTok sensation and away you go. But I did it the hard way. I didn't commentate karting or anything like that. I worked my way up as a work experience kid, starting from making the teas and coffees. And some of the people I made the teas and coffees for, I now work alongside as a broadcaster. So and I started when I was 17 years old, and I got my first proper break as a official broadcaster when I was 25 doing Porsche Super Cup. So there's no formulaic. There's no formulaic route. You can't say do this, do that, and then you'll get there.
Yeah.
But the best thing you could do is in this modern day and age, put your own content out there, whether it's TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, the whole shebang, and start trying to make some connections. Doesn't matter that you have none to begin with. In a way, I'd say that was better because you're coming in completely kind of naive. There's no politics to deal with. That's what I would suggest you do.
Fabulous.
Great advice.
Let's whip out the BBC.
Yeah.
So this is the backseat bop it challenge.
Bop it.
It is.
It's different from the one I had.
So this is it
hasn't got the flick and all the other ones on it.
No, this is twist, pull,
This is the original.
bop.
Okay.
This is the OG.
So it's the BBC challenge, backseat bop it challenge.
Nice.
So
Very on brand.
we've had a few very good scores recently. So
69's the best.
69
Okay.
is the best. So you've got
I'm just playing it.
you got 2 attempts. This is a practice run first.
Okay.
So you have to pull it first.
Oh, to get it started.
Yeah, to get it started.
Okay.
And then press the middle, bop it, yeah.
Okay.
We won't commentate.
No.
Never know what to do.
Harry Benjamin pulls the bop it.
Yeah. And it's all eyes to the lights.
I can't hear it.
Sorry.
No, you get
I'm being absolutely floored by that.
Get another
Come on,
practice
I'll get another
going.
try.
Right, we'll shut up.
Oh, that was practice anyway. Yeah.
All right. If
Go, have another practice.
you're going to speak into
No, I'm ready. Let's do it.
Okay.
But I need concentration.
Do it really
so I
close.
it again, yeah.
Close and quiet.
Oh no, pull. Okay.
Here we go.
It's all eyes to the lights. And away we go.
It's great twisting action from Harry Benjamin.
So he thinks he's got his final break. And now he's here playing Bop It on a little podcast.
From Sky Sports F1 Broadcasting to playing the BBC.
It's going well. It's going really well. Go on, Mr. Benjamin. Oh. He's got a better technique than Louise. This could be Ollie Webb. We're getting there. Oh. Oh,
Oh, that's shocking.
Do you want one more go?
No,
39.
No. I don't think I can do much better.
Okay.
We've got the
Well done, Harry.
quality.
I'm not quite the racing driver with my coordinates.
Louise had a very interesting.
How does she do?
She went like this.
Give an example.
I did think, am I holding it wrong? Because pull was very difficult. Twist and bop
I don't know
were
the
fine.
best. I don't know. I feel like you've got to be.
The old one used to be more like a steering wheel, and
that's
you
it.
had they had to spin it and flick it. That's new to me. I'm not
Yeah,
used to
but
that generation.
I think I'd have a stroke if I played.
We've gone for simplicity.
Right. Thank you so much for coming on, Harry.
Thank you for having me, guys.
it's
I really
been a pleasure.
appreciate it.
Yeah.
Fabulous.
Fabulous.
We're done.
Finito. Cut there.
Finito.